Election day is almost here. 97 million, almost 97 million people have early voted, which is twice the number of people who early voted in 2016. We could actually be at about 100 million people who early voted by election day. There were only 137 million people who voted in totality in 2016. So this election season continues to break records. All right. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Also, we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. So on tonight's show, we'll give you a brief update on what's going on with the on the campaign trail, the final full day on the campaign trail. And today is November 2nd. This is the 100th anniversary of the Ocoee, Florida massacre that took place on election day, November 2nd, 1920. November 2nd, 1920. So we're going to talk about that again today. Last week, we talked about the Koi Massacre, and I saw some articles. I saw a press conference today that took place in Florida. So we're going to deal with this massacre. This was the worst election day violence in U.S. history, the worst election day violence in U.S. history. And you had at least 50 African Americans who were murdered in this massacre that took place in Florida. And these were African Americans, many of them exercising their right to vote, understanding the importance of voting, and that impacts who is in office and the laws and policies that you are governed by. Okay. So we're going to talk about this. And then on yesterday's show, or Sunday night show, and just so everybody understands, we're now on 6 days a week. We're on Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. And then we're still on Sundays, my normal time slot. I've been in that time slot here on 9:10 a.m. for 4 years. We're still on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So on our Sunday night show, we dealt with update on what's going on with the campaign. We dealt with coronavirus. We talked about I did a comparison between Joe Biden's 22-page agenda, his plan to empower African Americans, and compared that to Donald Trump's his platinum plan, which is really a fool's gold plan. But the main topic for our Sunday night show was the history of Halloween, dealing with the real history of Halloween. Okay. And I mean, we dealt with a lot of history. So that's on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. I went through, edited. So we have the full version up that you can check out. And it's an audio podcast format also. Okay. So wherever you get your podcast from, search for The African History Network Show, The African History Network Show. And also you can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and click on listen to podcasts. Okay, so also on today's show, yesterday we ran out of time and we went over our 2 hours. We continued on our social media platform, so I ended up doing an additional hour. Okay, so the full show was like three plus hours actually. I was going to once again compare the Congressional Black Caucus's Jobs and Justice Act of 2020 versus Donald Trump's Fool's Gold plan. We ran out of time on Sunday's show, so we'll do that on today's show as well. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. You can also sign up for it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me / the AHN Show, paypal.me / the AHN Show. And then also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It definitely helps support the research and allows us to keep broadcasting, especially doing 6 days a week instead of 1 day a week. All right, so let's jump in. Oh, then also Saturday here in Detroit, Saturday, Joe Biden and Barack Obama had a campaign rally out at Belle Isle. Okay, and we have an excerpt of that as well because Barack Obama roasted Donald Trump once again. So we're going to share an excerpt of the President Barack Obama's speech also. Okay, all right. So when we look at the Koi Massacre of 1920. A lot of people don't know about this massacre. We know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've studied the Koi Massacre before, more so in depth now because this is the 100th anniversary. But this is taking place in 1920, 2 years after World War I ends, 1 year after the Red Summer in 1919. This is the year before the attack on Tulsa, which was June 1st, 1921. This was 3 years before the massacre in Rosewood, which was January 1923 in Rosewood, Florida, also once again in Florida. All right. So in response to an attempt by African Americans to exercise their legal and democratic right to vote, at least 50 African Americans were murdered in a brutal massacre in Ocoee, Florida on Election Day, November 2nd, 1920, in what is now called the Koi Massacre. Now, on November 1st, 1920, the day before the election, with robes and crosses, the Ku Klux Klan paraded through the streets of the two African-American communities in Ocoee, Florida, late into the night. With megaphones, they warned that, quote, not a single Negro will be permitted to vote. Not a single Negro will be permitted to vote. And if any of them dared to do so, there would be dire consequences. All right. Now, election day came and at least some African Americans did attempt to vote in Orange County, Florida. However, none were permitted to enter their respective polling places. White enforcers camped out around the centers and poll workers were given instructions to deflect their attempts. White enforcers, that sounds like the poll watchers Donald Trump is telling them to go into Philadelphia and go into these other communities. He doesn't say African-American communities. He doesn't say non-white communities. But this sounds like, you know, the white enforcers. Now, he doesn't tell these people, go into your own communities, go into your own neighborhoods and watch the polls there. He tells them go into other people's neighborhoods and watch the polls. Now, one by one, would-be African-American voters were turned away either by threats of violence or by poll workers who found their names, quote unquote, mysteriously absent from the voter registration rolls. That sounds like voter suppression. That sounds like, you know, in Georgia, and they removed over 100,000 people's names from the rolls. That sounds like the interstate cross-checking system that was used in 2016 in about 23 states. It knocked 1.1 million people off the voter rolls and targeted people with ethnic sounding names. Not about 50,000 people off the voter rolls here in Michigan, and Donald Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes. This sounds familiar to me. Maybe I'm just paranoid. I don't know. Now, pollsters instructed them to get documentation, the people whose names were mysteriously removed from the voter rolls. Pollsters instructed them to get documentation from Notary Public R.C. Bigelow, to verify that they were indeed registered to vote. Conveniently, however, R.C. Bigelow was unable to be located because he was out on a fishing trip that day. I don't know, maybe he's with Opie and Andy and Barney or something fishing. I don't know. With little other options, most African Americans returned to their homes without casting their ballots. Now, Mose Norman, M-O-S-E, Mose Norman, would not be so easily deterred. After being turned away that morning in his Ocoee precinct, he rode to Orlando, Florida, to seek the counsel of Judge Chaney. Now, the attorney instructed him to write down the names of any African Americans who were not permitted to vote, and also the names of the poll workers who had denied them their constitutional right based upon the 15th Amendment. Now, Judge Chaney said a lawsuit against the county could be brought to contest this violation. Now, Mose Norman returned to Ocoee, Florida with these instructions, along with a handful of African-American citizens, again seeking to vote. But things did not go well. After again being forcibly turned away, Mose Norman demanded the poll workers' names and exclaimed, "We will vote by God," quote unquote, "we will vote by God." The response by the Ku Klux Klan was a massacre. One of the people killed was named Julius July Perry. And he was, July Perry had become the well-respected godfather of the African-American community. He served as a deacon in the church and the local labor leader or straw boss. It was said that anyone seeking to employ African-American laborers needed to speak with him first. He was an admired, brave, and rational thinker, a sort of civil rights leader before there was a civil rights movement. He encouraged young African Americans to be educated and stand up for themselves as first-class citizens. Okay, now we're coming. Let me. How much time we have before the break, Shakita? We're going to continue this on the other side of the break and get deeper into some of the background history of Ocoee, Florida, and the Koi Massacre. If we look at, so the Zen Project has a good article on the Zen Educational Project, zenedproject.org. And we shared this information last week on our show. Washington Post has a good article dealing with the Koi Massacre. From November 2nd, 2020, a white mob unleashed the worst election day violence in U.S. history in Florida a century ago. A white mob unleashed the worst election day violence in U.S. history in Florida a century ago. So now this was the same day. So November 2nd, 1920, this was the same day that women voted nationally for the first time, okay, because of the 19th Amendment. The perpetrators got away, those who committed the heinous crimes, those who committed the murders. They got away with what they did for the rest of their lives. There are no roadside markers in Ocoee, Florida, as you might find in Selma. No excavation projects to locate the purported mass graves, as we believe have been discovered in Tulsa. Until recently, many descendants of the survivors of this massacre had no idea that they were descendants of survivors, or that they had been robbed of a valuable inheritance long before they were born, because you had African-American landowners there, business owners, okay? Now, after years of research, a new exhibit at the Orange County Regional History Center in Orlando has unearthed a crime long buried. Pamela Schwartz is the chief curator of the History Center, and she said most of the people living in Ocoee don't even know that this happened there. Most of the people living in Ocoee, Florida, don't even know this happened there. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, WFDF in Detroit. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Melanized Media is an independently Black-owned and operated film company. We specialize in producing culturally enriching Black films and videos at melanizedmedia.com. Join us every Sunday for Melanized Nights, where we screen a socially conscious documentary film or Black historic presentation. That's every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Visit melanizedmedia.com to learn more and to register. That's MELANEYES media.com. Peace.
For 25 years, the Black History 101 Mobile Museum has carried on the rich legacy of the Black Museum movement in America by showcasing original artifacts of the Black experience at colleges, universities, K-12 schools, corporations, libraries, conferences, and cultural events, making it the most traversed Black History mobile exhibit in American history. Dr. Khalid El Hakim is the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and he is a highly sought-after public speaker on topics of Black history, social studies, education, museum studies, hip-hop, and race relations. Dr. Khalid was named among the change makers for NBC Universal's Erase the Hate campaign and listed as one of the 100 men of distinction for Black enterprise. He recently founded the Michigan Hip Hop Archive on the campus of Western Michigan University. The Black History 101 Mobile Museum is currently scheduling in-person and virtual exhibits nationwide. For more information, please contact Dr. Khalid Al Hakim directly at 313-645-4197, 313-645-4197, or visit their website at blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. That's blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. You can also email him at bhistory101@yahoo.com, bhistory101@yahoo.com. Yaya Rule is a line of African print-inspired apparel catered to the Black community. The pieces include t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, jackets, dresses, skirts, activewear, bags, and other accessories and home decor. This brand offers a revived way for men and women to wear their Black pride and honor their African heritage anywhere at any time. This apparel line is for anyone, whether you are working in the corporate world, are an entrepreneur, or an artist. Their selection will allow you to casually let your pride shine or dress it up as wanted. It is for those who have already embraced African fabrics and for those who are just getting introduced to them. Reclaim and experience a part of our culture with rich and colorful African prints. The clothing line and the accessories are available right now starting at $17.99. For more information on the new items and accessories, visit yayarule.com. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, November 2nd, 2020, and this election cycle is almost over. I'm exhausted. And we'll be on live tomorrow. We'll be on live Tuesday, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, giving you updates on what's going on. So we'll be on live. We're here 6 days a week. We'll be on live tomorrow also. Tomorrow's no exception. I don't get the day off. I wish I did, but I don't get the day off. All right. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about the Koi Massacre of 1920, and I want to pull up presentation here, and because this ties into the Red Summer also. This ties into the Red Summer of 1919. So everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. You're not going to hear this type of information many other places. All right, so the Koi Massacre took place on November 2nd, 1920, on Election Day. Okay, and it was the worst example of election day violence, basically in history. Let's see here. Do we have the Red Summer in here? Yeah. Okay. I think we have the Red Summer. Okay. All right. So let's go back to this. All right. Washington Post has a good article. A white mob unleashed the worst election day violence in U.S. history in Florida a century ago. All right. So there is a now we talked about the Koi Massacre on our show last week. So you can go back and listen to that show as well. We have some additional information today. After years of research, a new exhibit at the Orange County Regional History Center in Orlando, Florida, has unearthed a crime long buried. Pamela Schwartz, chief curator of the History Center, said most of the people living in Ocoee, Florida, don't even know that this happened there. Now, so the African Americans and white people in Ocoee, Florida, were neighbors for about 30 years before this massacre took place. Okay, there goes the neighborhood. I ain't say that. Ocoee was founded in the 1850s by a white man who brought 23 enslaved African Americans with them. So this is 1850s. Civil War starts in 1861. Civil War is 1861 to 1865. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. After the Civil War, many Confederate veterans resettled there in Ocoee, Florida, hiring African American laborers to work their land. Now, starting in 1888, many of those laborers were able to purchase the very acres of land over which they had been toiling from their white employers, bringing them wealth and security often denied to African Americans in the Jim Crow South. Because one of the things what many of us wanted to do was own some land, because we had an agricultural background. We also had a skills trades background as well. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Okay, so it wasn't just that we were it wasn't that we just had an agricultural background and planting crops and things like this, but no, we were also masters in the skills trades. Okay, so you have African Americans who are acquiring land and owning land to give us some type of stability here in Ocoee, Florida. Now, after let's see here, so census records indicate that in 1920, about 1/3 of the town of 800 was African American. Okay, census records in 1920 indicate that about 1/3 of Ocoee, Florida, was African American. There were 800 people in general in Ocoee, Florida. Though it isn't accurate to say Ocoee was integrated, though it is not accurate to say that Ocoee was integrated, there was not a blacks only neighborhood across the proverbial tracks as you might find elsewhere in the South, like in Tulsa. North Tulsa was where African Americans lived. South Tulsa was where white people lived. The railroad tracks separated North Tulsa from South Tulsa. Quote, it was interspersed. It wasn't like, here's a black part of town, here's the white part of town. Pamela Schwartz, chief curator of the History Center, said these people were neighbors for 30 years before the massacre happened. Okay. Now, after World War I ended in 1918, the same trends happened nationally. The same trends happening nationally took hold in Ocoee, Florida as well. African American veterans returned home expecting better treatment as they got in Europe, but white supremacist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan resurfaced to keep that from happening. Racist violence erupted all over the country in what became known as the Red Summer of 1919. All right, so World War I ends, and these African American men come back home with a new sense of pride, and they're known as race men. And you know they're fighting for first-class citizenship. They're fighting for their rights. They're saying that, we fought for this country. We died for this country in World War I. We're not going to we're not going to deal with all this racism and Jim Crow, things like this. We want all of our rights now. Okay. So you have that taking place with this new sense of pride. You also have what's known as the new Negro. These are men who are proud of their race and say, we're not going to take this anymore. Okay. Now, this is also taking place during the Great Migration as well. So let's turn on the screen share. So those watching, you can watch us on our social media platforms, watch us on our Facebook page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, and Michael Imhotep on YouTube. Still listen on the 10 AM Superstation. Still listen there. Okay, but go to the computer or on the phone and you can watch because I'm showing the slide. All right. Let's turn this on here. This should come up. Let's do this again. Hold on. Let's pull this up. All right. So if we look at the Great Migration, this is from a lecture I did dealing with, this is from my presentation for African American History Month for 2020, because this year is the sesquicentennial of the 15th Amendment of 1870. This is the 150th anniversary, February 3rd, 1870, the 15th Amendment was adopted. So this year's theme for African American History Month was African Americans and the Vote. There's an official theme each year coming from ASALH, Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was co-founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, September 9th, 1915. So you have the 1915, you have ASALH founded, and you have African Americans going into the 1920s starting to learn about their history more, et cetera, because of Dr. Carter G. Woodson and Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. But if you look at the Great Migration very quickly here, the Koi Massacre in 1920 is taking place within a larger context of the Great Migration, which is basically from 1915 to 1970. And you're going to have 6 million African Americans who migrate from the rural South to cities up north and go out west, go to the Midwest, go out west. And this takes place from about 1915 to 1970. This is totally going to change this country. Driven from their homes by unsatisfactory economic opportunities and harsh segregationist laws, many African Americans headed north, where they took advantage of the need for industrial workers that first arose during the First World War, 1914, 1918. The U.S. gets involved in the war in 1917. During the Great Migration, African Americans began to build a new place for themselves in public life, actively confronting racial prejudice as well as economic, political, and social challenges to create a Black urban culture that would exert enormous influence in the decades to come. Okay, so the Koi Massacre is taking place within this context of the Great Migration. Even though they're in Florida, we have all this taking place across the country, and Ocoee, Florida is 2 years after World War I ends and 1 year after the Red Summer 1919. Now, by the end of 1919, at the same time, you have 1918, 1919, and even going into beginning of 1920, you had a Spanish flu pandemic as well that killed 675,000 Americans and killed at least 50 million people worldwide. By the end of 1919, some 1 million African Americans had left the South, usually traveling by train, boat, or bus. A smaller number had automobiles or even horse-drawn carts. In the decade between 1910 and 1920, the African American population of major northern cities grew by large percentages, including New York. It grew by 66% by 1910 to 1920. Okay, that decade. In Chicago, it grew by 148%. In Philadelphia, it grew by 500%. And in Detroit, it grew by 611%. 611% from 1910 to 1920. You have 1908, Highland Park, Michigan, you have Henry Ford. Okay. And Henry Ford, Ford Motor Company, 1908, Highland Park, Michigan. Okay, let's continue here. So now rising rents in segregated areas, plus a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan activity in 1915, and a lot of that was spurred by the movie The Birth of a Nation, which rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan. In 1915 was the 50th anniversary of the Klan being founded, December 24th, 1865, in Pulaski, Tennessee. And 1915 was the 50th anniversary of the 13th Amendment, 50th anniversary of chattel slavery ending also. So rising rents in segregated areas plus a resurgence of Ku Klux Klan activity after 1915 worsened African-American and white relations across the country. The summer of 1919 began the greatest period of interracial strife in U.S. history at that time, including a disturbing wave of race riots. For more information, check out this article from history.com, which is the official website of the History Channel. It's called Great Migration at history.com. Okay, so this gives the historical context of which this period of time of the Great Migration, the Ocoee Massacre of 1920, is taking place within this context of the Great Migration. All right. Now, Black migration slowed considerably in the 1930s when the country sank into the Great Depression, but picked up after World War II. All right, let's go to the Red Summer 1919. This is the year before the Koi Massacre, the Red Summer 1919. Now, the Red Summer marked the culmination of steadily growing tensions surrounding the Great Migration of African Americans from the rural South to the cities of the North that took place during World War I. When the war ended in late 1918, thousands of servicemen returned home from fighting in Europe to find that their jobs in factories, warehouses, and mills had been filled by newly arrived Southern African Americans or immigrants. So there was 5 million men that fought in World War I, most of them white. When they left, they had jobs. When they came back, they didn't have jobs. But what they did bring back with them was skills on how to fight and how to kill, and they brought back guns with them. And there was brothers that went and served in World War I, and we learned how to fight and how to kill too, and we brought those skills back with us as well. So there was warfare going on in the streets of America. We weren't laying down; we were fighting back and shooting back. History.com has articles dealing with how Black men stood up to protect their community. They were armed and they stood up to protect their community against the white supremacists who were attacking them. So when the war ended in late 1918, thousands of servicemen returned home from fighting in Europe to find that their jobs in factories and mills had been filled by newly arrived Southern African Americans or immigrants. Amid financial insecurity, racial and ethnic prejudices ran rampant. Amid financial insecurity, racial and ethnic prejudices ran rampant. At the same time that this is going on, you have the Spanish flu pandemic going on also. At the very same time, the Red Summer is taking place. Okay. Now, it was called the Red Summer. James Weldon Johnson, who wrote the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. James Weldon Johnson named it the Red Summer because the streets of America were flowing with blood. Now, this was 2 years after the East St. Louis race riot in East St. Louis, Illinois. Okay, this was 2 years after that. And that East St. Louis race riot, that led to the Silent March of 1917, when you had 10,000 African Americans marching down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, demanding a federal anti-lynching bill. Okay, that was 1917. So the Ocoee Massacre is 3 years after the Silent March in 1917, and it was and then the Silent March is 2 years before the Red Summer. So all this is taking place during the Great Migration. Okay. So it's important to understand this chronology of history. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. If you have a quick question or comment, this is the African History Network show right here on 910 AM the Superstation. And also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. $, the AHN show through Cash App. $, the AHN show through Cash App. And also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Then also at our website, my lectures dealing with Black Migration, 1619 to Black Migration 1619 to 2019, that 400-year period of time, all that. I have this full presentation on DVD as well. Okay, let's continue here. And we're dealing with the 100th anniversary of the Koi Massacre that took place in Ocoee, Florida on November 2nd, 1920 on Election Day. Okay, so meanwhile, African-American veterans who had risked their lives fighting for the causes of freedom and democracy found themselves denied basic rights such as adequate housing and equality under the law, leading them to become increasingly militant. Okay, so then you have the Chicago race riot of 1919 during the Red Summer, July 27, 1919. It starts. You have it in Chicago. You have one in Arkansas, also about 200 sharecroppers killed. This is a picture here of the Chicago race riot, and it's a brother in his World War I uniform, and it's a white member of the state militia. The state militia is going to be sent in to quell the violence took place on Chicago's South Side during the 1919 riots, during the Red Summer. Okay, now let's see here. Let me skip past that. This is dealing with okay. All right, that's some background information dealing with the Red Summer 1919. All right, now the fight for women's suffrage further fueled these tensions between African Americans and white people. Okay, racist violence erupted all over the country in what became known as the Red Summer of 1919, and the fight for women's suffrage further fueled those tensions. Many anti-suffragists argued that if women were permitted to vote, African American men might try to vote too. So it's largely going to be white men who are again, but you had some African American men who were chauvinists back then too, and I guess you got a couple still today. But many anti-suffragists argued that if women were permitted to vote, then African American men might try to vote too. Some suffragists denied this would happen, and some even argued that white women should be allowed to vote so they could act as a bulwark against any black men who might try to exercise their rights. Now, in Ocoee, Florida, African American and white Republican leaders held clinics to show African American residents how to register to vote, how to pay a poll tax, and how to cast a ballot. Now, the 24th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution banned poll taxes in 1962. Now, a month before the 1920 election, two of the white leaders, Attorney W.R. O'Neill and Judge John Chaney, received a threatening letter from the Ku Klux Klan. It said, quote, "We shall always enjoy white supremacy in this country, and he who interferes must face the consequences," end quote, it read. Now, across Florida, in Daytona, Jacksonville, and Orlando, Florida, local KKK chapters held huge rallies to intimidate potential African-American voters. Florida may not spring to mind immediately when one thinks of the Jim Crow South, But in fact, there were more lynchings there per capita than in any other state besides Mississippi, according to research from the Equal Justice Initiative. That's Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative. And you can check out their website, eji.org. And I follow them on Facebook. So we share on our Facebook fan page, we share some of their daily posts dealing with this date in history. They also have a post, they have an article on their website and on their page dealing with this massacre as well. Now, white Floridians used racial terrorism not just to intimidate voters, but also to discourage labor organizing in the orange groves and turpentine farms. We'll go to the phone line in just a minute. White Floridians used racial terrorism not just to intimidate voters, but also to discourage labor organizing in the orange groves and turpentine farms. See, back at this time, we understood how the laws we were fighting against that were oppressing us were put in place by people who were elected. So we understood that we had to fight back against that. Okay. So today, some people are confused. We had a better understanding of this back then. So, okay, let's go to the phone lines quickly here. We've got John, line 1. John, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. Thanks for holding.
Yes, now it's in power.
Yeah, John. John, are you on the speakerphone?
I'm on. I wait a minute. I moved. Okay. Now.
Yeah, take a speakerphone for radio.
Yeah, I had to wait. Now, you always speaking about vote, and you said vote count. You showed this before, the vote didn't count. Now, I remind you that
I said what now? John, are you on a speakerphone?
No, I'm not on a speakerphone.
Okay, you sound like there's almost an echo. You sound like, okay, go ahead. It's,
I just wanted to appreciate you for giving them my knowledge by going to vote and so forth.
Right.
The jury in Texas tonight overruled the people in Texas because they were trying to keep 147,000 African Americans off the voting roll and so forth.
Well, these were people who voted. Most of them, it was through a drive-in, through a drive-in voting location, and it was 127,000 people who voted. So you had Republicans down in Texas who took this to court, and they were trying to get those ballots thrown out. You know, so these are voter suppression tactics from Republicans, and they realize that they can't run on the issues, so they're trying to suppress the vote by any means necessary. This is what they're doing. So the question I would ask people is, if your vote doesn't matter, why do Republicans work so hard to suppress your vote? The day before the election, they're trying to get 127,000 ballots thrown out.
That's right. And the judge overruled them.
Judge overruled them. Yeah.
Appointed by President Barack Obama. The president judge, they were people on the Supreme Court, and then he run for the Supreme Judge in some type of way, and he wanted to overrule and so forth. So I just want to congratulate you by giving people knowledge about going and vote, and they can vote tomorrow, so all day, and the place don't be open. I think 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I stood in line 4 hours myself, so I just
you stood in line for 4 hours.
Yeah, so good.
What?
Downtown.
Okay. When did you vote?
I today.
Oh, today. Oh, that's why. Okay. I voted last Thursday, man. I was in and out in 25 minutes, but okay. All right, John. We'll be on tomorrow night. Call us back tomorrow night, okay?
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks. All right. But John voted. He stood in line for 4 hours. He voted. So, all right. He's good. He got it in. All right. Because I'm telling you right now, Donald Trump supporters, they gonna stand in line for 14 hours to vote. Then try to run your ass off the road. I'm just saying. All right. That's if they don't get stranded at a Trump rally. Oh my God. And then Trump's holding these super spreader events. We talked about the article from the Hill.com had a report and a study from Stanford University. But yeah, he's holding these super spreader events, people catching coronavirus also. All right. All right, let's go very quickly here. Let's go back to the phone lines. We got Kwame on line one. Kwame, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Detroit. You know, you compare and contrast this to the voting that we're doing today, and I agree with you, but it looks like a cycle is going on, because every 20 years, we're dealing, you know, 40 with Roosevelt, 60 with Kennedy, 30 in 1980 and 2000. I don't think we had too much of a problem then, but there's another cycle that came in there, and I don't want to mention that now. But Trump is challenging what you're talking about that happened in the 1920s, 1919 race riots. So, you know, it's like we should be prepared for the next 20 years. That's what it sounds like to me. It's a cycle.
Well, things happen in cycles. Things happen in cycles,
yeah.
and you have responses to responses to events and responses to movements. So you have to understand history to understand the trends. Richard Nixon in 1968. Mm-hmm. Richard Nixon in 1968 was a backlash to the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, affirmative action. He was a backlash to the rebellions that were taking place across the country. Okay, Detroit, 1967, Newark, New Jersey. You had 2 terms of President Barack Obama, 2008, 2012, 2016. Donald Trump is a backlash to 2 terms of President Barack Obama. He's a backlash to the Black Lives Matter movement. He's a backlash to the protests for police accountability. Donald Trump ran on the platform of law and order in 2016. In 1968, Richard Nixon ran on the platform of law and order. Law and order means protect white people and lock up African Americans. This is what law and order is. Yeah. So Donald Trump ran on that platform, okay, and then he went through reverse basically all the policies, as many as he could from the Obama administration. There's over 200 policy reversals that Trump has done. There's 192 executive orders Trump has signed. So there's whenever you have any period of time of perceived advancement by African Americans, there's always a backlash to that. What we have to understand is history to understand the backlash and how to defend against it coming. If we understood history, hold on just a second. If we understood Richard Nixon in 1968, we would have stopped Donald Trump dead in his tracks in 2016, because we would have had a better understanding of what was coming. We wouldn't have to get our asses kicked every 20 years and act like we ain't never read a history book. Yeah. Go ahead, and then we're almost out of time. Go ahead with your last thought.
I'm just, the backlash that I was talking about was between the big groups of black and white people that were fighting each other.
Which big groups of black and which big groups of black and white people are you talking? Hold on. Which big groups of black and white people are you talking about?
The right hand in 1919 when the soldiers came.
Oh, you're talking about the race riots in 1919.
Yeah, the race
riots.
And the race riots of the 60s, of course, and you know, there was a lot of commotions in the other 20 years if you look at the history.
Yeah, but see, in 1919, most of those, the majority of those were white people attacking African Americans in 1919. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. In 67, in the 60s, it's like 66, 67, those rebellions, those were more so African Americans rebelling against the system of white supremacy and racism, rebelling against police, things like that. Even though in 1919 in Chicago, you had African Americans fighting against the police after the 17-year-old boy Eugene Williams was killed. He was swimming in Lake Michigan and he was stoned to death. But it's a different dynamic. It's a different dynamic in 1919 because those white men came back home, couldn't find jobs, and the racial tensions were exacerbated by the Ku Klux Klan. So you had a lot of white people attacking African Americans. In 67 is a different dynamic, but you still had the rebellions taking place. But we were rebelling against the system of white supremacy more so in the 60s.
Yeah, right. I agree with you because it was against the commercial interests of white people. That's what was happening in the 60s. But we can go on, but I'm gonna let you go on.
Yeah, we can't go on, man. We out of time here. Okay, we only on for an hour here on 910 AM, man, Monday through Friday. We'll be back tomorrow night. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Okay. All right, we're going to continue for a couple more minutes, and then we're going to continue on our social media platforms. So those watch us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. We're going to continue for a little while longer. We're only here for an hour on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight. Okay. So despite the threats, a handful of African-American residents in Ocoee, Florida, both men and women, showed up to the polls on election day, November 2nd, 1920, 100 years ago. In the morning, they cast their ballots without incident, according to two accounts. But in the late afternoon, an African-American labor broker named Moses Norman, also known as Mose Norman, showed up to vote. Election officials told Mose Norman that he had not paid his poll tax. He said he had, but he was turned away. Norman sought help from Judge Cheney, the white judge, who advised him to try again. Again, he was turned away. It's unclear exactly how or why, but that was the spark that lighted a racist inferno that burned Black Ocoee, Florida, to the ground. By the evening, a white mob had arrived from Orlando, Florida. A rumor spread that Mose Norman was hiding out in the home of Julius July Perry, an African-American landowner and community leader in his early 50s who had been involved in the voter registration drive. His house was surrounded by the mob. At some point, two white men were shot and killed, perhaps by July Perry's teenage daughter, perhaps by one another as they fired their weapons at the house. Then it went up in flames. So did a nearby AME church where Norman and Moses Norman and July Perry were trustees, and at least 24 other homes. Basically, the options were leave and get shot or stay and burn, Pamela Schwartz said. Okay, so we're out of time here. Thanks for listening to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation and Future Radio. You can also donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. We'll be back Tuesday night. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Michael Baisden or whoever's coming on next. I don't remember. And we'll be back tomorrow night. And follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and Michael Imhotep. Talk to you later. Peace. Are you ready for a new Black economy? Well, Hickey, The Role of Economics in the Development of Civilization, is a brand new documentary that will set you on a new path of knowledge and enlightenment. The Hickey film gives viewers a snapshot of our economic history from the dawn of civilization right up until today. The underlying theme of the film is the interrelationship between the three essential components of economics, politics, and culture. Hickey brings together the brightest and most prolific minds in the fields of psychology, history, business, and politics, such as Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Dr. Julian Malveaux, Dr. Zahi Hawass, and Jabari Osazi, and more. Together, they deliver a message of cooperative economics, financial independence, and a pride that we can all be inspired by. The film is on sale now. It's streaming on all digital formats, or for DVD, please visit Hapi, H-A-P-I, hapifilm.com. Use offer code HAPI, AHN, for a 10% discount. Sage and Elm Apothecary creates unique products, especially with you in mind. They use simple ingredients such as whole fruits, herbs, and vegetables. Each product crafted offers a unique plant-based experience. Their holistic approach to self-care formulate their product inventory. They're proud to serve our community of plant-based product supporters and offerings for the entire family. Sage and Elm Apothecary designs over 60 different beautifully handcrafted soaps, natural toothpaste, hydrating oils, deodorants, face masks, shampoos, conditioners, and so much more. Visit their website at sageandelmapothecary.com. That's sageandelmapothecary.com, APOTHECARY, and find out about their upcoming events throughout the year. Allow Sage and Elm Apothecary to provide for all of your plant-based needs. Use promo code AHNWinter20, AHNWinter20 for a special discount. Gain knowledge in minutes with Blacklist Ed. Blacklist Ed is an app that provides insightful summaries of books pertaining to the Black experience. As Black people, we know the importance of reading books to discover our incredible contributions to world history, to uplift our self-esteem, and to empower ourselves for our relentless fight for social justice. Unfortunately, with our busy lives, it feels like there is never enough time to read a book. Fortunately, there's a solution. With Blacklist Ed, their app provides key insights from best-selling books about the Black experience, therefore saving you time, increasing your knowledge, and empowering yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. You can read or listen on the go. Start your free trial today by going to blacklisted.com. That's Black without the C, B-L-A-K. Or you can download the Blacklist Ed app from the App Store or Google Play. Blacklist Ed, empower yourself. Revitalizing, restorative, indulgent, essential. Crea's Love Butter Raw Shea Butter Collection. How do we know if our skin products are truly delivering all of the health benefits they should? Crea's Love Butter is a thoughtful combination of hand-selected ingredients designed to enhance the level of your skin's health. Crea's Love Butter is an ideal gift for health-conscious loved ones and is a pleasure to both give and receive. They've harnessed the restorative powers of raw shea butter and infused it with their love and passion for revitalizing skin that you will undoubtedly feel from the first use. Visit their website today, creaslovebutter.com. C-R-E-A-S, creaslovebutter.com. Put your skin in the game. All right, how's everybody doing? Okay, we're going to continue here. So we're dealing with the Ocoee Massacre of 1920, November 2nd. It was an election day massacre in Ocoee, Florida, November 2nd, 1920. So this is the 100th anniversary of that massacre. Now, it may never be known exactly how many African-American residents were killed that night. Newspaper accounts said six. It said 6 African-Americans were killed. Witnesses remembered many more, perhaps 30 or even 60. One person claimed 2.5 wagon loads of African-American bodies were dumped in a trench near a lake. Research is ongoing, but Pamela Schwartz and her team have been able to confirm 4 people who were killed. 3 were unidentified burned bodies buried by a funeral home. The other was July Perry. Amazingly, the Perrys made it out of the house alive. His wife and daughter were taken to a jail in Tampa, Florida. July Perry, shot in the leg, was taken to a jail in Orlando, Florida. Within hours, a lynch mob pulled July Perry from his cell, and he was brutalized and killed. His body was left hanging in front of Judge Cheney's Orlando, Florida home. No one was ever held responsible for any of the deadly violence. Agents for the Bureau of Investigation, later it would become the FBI. At this point, it's the Bureau of Investigation, showed up a few weeks later. Agents for the Bureau of Investigation showed up a few weeks later, but they made it clear they weren't investigating murder, arson, or assault. They made it clear they were not investigating murder, arson, or assault. They were interested only in election fraud. Okay. So I'm not sure who they were looking at. I'm not sure who they suspected of election fraud, but okay. Now, the leader of the mob became the mayor of Ocoee, Florida. The leader of this mob became the mayor of Ocoee, Florida. Now, Robert Hickey, Hickey, is a retired educator in New York. In the late 1940s and 50s, he was raised by his grandparents in Apopka, Florida, Apopka, while his mother worked as a maid up north. Those grandparents, Lucy and John Hickey, did not like talking about what they had survived decades earlier. But over the years, he pieced it together. Because a lot of people you had people who are in Koi now who are survivors. They're descendants of survivors of this massacre and didn't know they were descendants. John Hickey had owned a lot of land in and around Ocoee, Florida, from which he sold lumber and produced turpentine. He did so well that he would even lend money to white people, John Hickey said. On the night of the massacre, his grandmother, quote, was standing on the front porch of their house and watched all the homes go up in flames. So as it got closer to them, they fled into the swamps. That's what Robert Hickey said. I should say Robert Hickey. Robert Hickey was the grandson of John Hickey. Okay, John Hickey, his grandfather, owned a lot of land in and around Ocoee, Florida. Okay, so the couple hid with the two children they had at the time in a hole. The couple hid with the two children they had at the time in a hole left by a pine tree until the next night. Then his grandfather, John Hickey, hooked up a wagon and sent his wife and children to stay with friends in a neighboring town without him. As a man, he was more of a target, and he didn't want his family to witness if he got caught. Quote, she took the back roads to Apopka, Florida, and they were stopped by some white men on horses, but they allowed them to go forward, end quote. Robert Hickey said, the grandson. His grandfather walked through the forest and swamps and joined them a few days later. Some people never returned to Ocoee, Florida after the massacre, but many did and tried to rebuild, only to be pressured into signing their land over to white people and leaving for good. Now, Robert Hickey's grandfather, John Hickey, bought one of his properties in 1911 for $200. A decade later, he sold the property for $5. Okay, he bought one of his properties in 1911 for $200. A decade later, which would be about 1921, he sold it for $5. He moved with his family to Apopka, Florida, and started over, eventually purchasing several houses that he rented to laborers in the orange groves. But what happened in Ocoee, Florida, stayed with him. Quote, I could tell that something had happened to him that was really bad, end quote. Robert Hickey said about his grandfather, John Hickey. He was very withdrawn. Now, as part of their research, Pamela Schwartz and her team mapped out 44 properties lost by African-American residents onto present-day maps, then valued them in today's dollars. They also tracked down as many descendants of survivors as they could. They have held virtual tours of the exhibit for dozens of family members, and they've informed the families how much the stolen land is worth today. That's how Pamela Schwartz and Robert Hickey met. His grandfather's land, John Hickey's grandfather, she told him is now worth $750,000. Quote, I just heard this big sigh on the other end of the phone, end quote, Pamela Schwartz said. A lot of people who were involved in the whole swindle were public officials. He earned it. He didn't steal it. He didn't take it, but it was stolen from him, Robert Hickey said. Now, Robert Hickey said he spoke with a lawyer who represented descendants of the 1923 Rosewood, Florida massacre. And I've done a whole presentation dealing with Rosewood, Florida. A 1994 law has allowed hundreds of Rosewood descendants to attend Florida colleges tuition free, one of the first examples of legislation making reparations to African Americans. Now, Robert Hickey wondered whether the law could apply to his family since his grandparents experienced the same sort of terrorism inflicted on the residents of Rosewood, Florida, but they experienced this in Ocoee, Florida. Okay, we should call it domestic terrorism. Okay, and that ain't just terrorism, it's domestic terrorism. But the lawyer said no. Now, the properties that the History Center has mapped so far are worth at least $10 million altogether. These 44 properties that they mapped are worth at least $10 million. July Perry's family was cheated out of his land also. While his wife was still in jail in Tampa, Florida, she signed over the executorship of July Perry's land to Bluford Sims, S-I-M-S, Bluford Sims, B-L-U-F-O-R-D, who was a Confederate captain and July Perry's former employer. He posted an ad in the newspaper for, quote, beautiful little groves belonging to the Negroes that have just left Ocoee, end quote. After years of litigation, his children received about $100 each for land that sold for thousands of dollars. Now, Ocoee was a whites-only sundown town. Ocoee, Florida was a whites-only sundown town until the 1970s. And sundown towns, basically, it meant that African Americans were only allowed in those towns in the daytime. If you were caught at nighttime, you could be jailed or beaten, or you may end up dead, or what have you. So you knew to get out by nighttime. Okay, it was a sundown town. But African Americans in the region never forgot what happened there. In the late 1990s, a local activist group, the Democracy Forum, pressed for town halls about the massacre, some of which included descendants of the perpetrators. Now, Pamela Schwartz said, quote, sometimes the sentiment was, it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. Sometimes the sentiment was, it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. 15 years later, and 35 miles away, an African-American teenager named Trayvon Martin was shot to death in Sanford, Florida, sparking the Black Lives Matter movement. In 2017, members of the Democracy Forum approached the History Center with its archive of the massacre, of the Ocoee, Florida massacre. They also asked for a 100th anniversary commemoration in the year 2020. In 2018, the city released a proclamation acknowledging the massacre A formal apology to descendants is in the works, and the Florida state legislature has passed a law requiring that the Ocoee Election Day Massacre be taught in Florida schools. The property where the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME Church, used to be is now a Mexican restaurant. The main road is named for Bluford Sims, although there's a petition to change it. Okay, so Bluford Sims was a Confederate captain, and he was the former employer of July Perry. Okay, and he got the land that July Perry owned. Okay, so you got a road in Florida named after Bluford Sims. Now, a newer house stands where Perry's home used to be. When reached by a Washington Post reporter, the homeowner said he, quote, didn't know anything about that, end quote, before ending the call. This past summer as the History Center put the final touches on its exhibit, the nation erupted into protests after the killing of George Floyd. One evening, one of the staff members went to a Black Lives Matter protest in Orlando, Florida, where she was surprised to see a young man holding up a sign that read, July Perry, Ocoee, Florida, November 2nd, 1920. All right, check out this extensive article here from the Washington Post by Jillian Bracale. A white mob unleashed the worst election day violence in U.S. history in Florida a century ago. Okay. And then also look at the piece from the Zen Project, the Zen Education Project, zenedproject.org, zenedproject.org. The piece from the Zen Project we shared before. I want to pull this up again. I think it was in this one here. There was an interview with a man whose father was friends with Mose Norman, and he talks about what happened. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, let's see here. I think it was in this one. Also, CNN has an article. I posted this on my personal page. CNN has an article that came out today as well. On this day, 100 years ago, a white mob unleashed the deadliest election day violence in U.S. history. I wonder why they didn't want these black people to vote if their vote didn't matter so much. I still can't figure that out. They ain't want these black people to vote in an election. Okay, let me see what. Just a second here. Now, back on October 23rd, I shared there was an article from yahoonews.com. We talked about this here on this show. Proposal to pay descendants of Koi Massacre victims takes a step forward. Proposal to pay descendants of Koi Massacre victims takes a step forward. Let me see here. We'll post this link to this article here from the Zen Education Project. And I think it was this one here from vice.com. Okay, I think it was in this one here. Vice.com has an article that we shared with you last week dealing with the Koi Massacre. That time, white people burned and pillaged a black community on election day. That time, white people burned and pillaged a black community on election day. The 1920 massacre in Ocoee, Florida involved whites lynching, castrating, and removing hundreds of blacks from their land in retaliation for them trying to exercise their right to vote. Okay. I still can't figure out why you're so mad at black people for voting, because our vote doesn't mean anything. So I don't understand this. Here's that clip I was looking for. This is a forgot his name. This is the man, his father was friends with Mose Norman. He talks about what happened in the Koi Massacre.
Welcome back to Our Legacy, the Willie Clark Show Black History Month special. You know, many people know about the story of Rosewood, the North Florida town that was destroyed by whites in 1920. Of course, we saw the movie, right? But not many people know that there was a similar incident right here in Central Florida in the city of Ocoee. It occurred on Election Day, 1920, when Mose Norman, an African-American, went to the polls and attempted to vote. He was turned away, but he returned later with a shotgun. He was disarmed and beaten by whites. And later, his friend July Perry obtained a note from the judge saying that indeed he and Mose Norman were eligible to vote in this election. Later that afternoon, a group of whites burst into July Perry's home. Mr. Perry, armed with a shotgun, killed 2 of the white men. He was arrested and taken to the Orlando jail. Later on that day, a mob of whites broke into the jail, removed Mr. Perry. He was taken out and lynched. Throughout the remainder of the day in Ocoee, a riot ensued as whites went about burning black churches, homes, and businesses. 5 blacks were killed, and by the end of the day, no blacks resided in the city of Ocoee. It would be 50 years before African Americans would return. Reverend Fred L. Maxwell, who has been the pastor of the St. John Missionary Baptist Church here in Orlando for 34 years, joins us now. He was just 13 at the time of the race riot, but he remembers it very well. Pastor Maxwell, thanks for joining me for the program.
I'm more than grateful.
Could you take us back to 1920 and your remembrances of the Ocoee race riot? I understand you were familiar with Moses Norman and also July Perry.
Right.
That.
The voting took place with the early morning of November 7th. And of course, as a result, a riot, an insurrection occurred. And throughout the day, many people were hurt. But it just so happened that one good friend of my father, Mose Norman, was one of the outstanding citizens and property owners in the Ocoee area. And when he saw that the situation had gotten out of hand and the plan for at least the mobsters began setting fire to homes of black people, plus the churches, 2 churches, and Masonic Hall. And Mose Norman, he took off in his Columbia 6 automobile and came by the home of our family and called my father and related to my father what was going on. And of course, Mose Norman was able to escape the wrath of the mob. But unfortunately, Mr. July Perry, of course, employing his weapons and ammunition, attempting to defend himself and family, he was shot and wounded in his cane.
And I understand Mr. Norman had just talked about or come from July Perry's house just before he came to your house.
He left Mr. July when he discovered that Mr. July Perry had been shot. Then Mose, for his safety, he took off and escaped. And he came by our home and called my father. And
now,
of course,
you're over in Apopka. Now, the rioting did spill over to an Apopka, but what were the senses of the time? I mean, what was the mood amongst people? Were people, I mean, even before the elections took place, were people aware there's going to be trouble? I would imagine in 1920 and the Voting Rights Act just hadn't been passed.
Yes.
In 1920.
Now, Mr. Norman also said to my father that some nights before, perhaps a week before, that the Ku Klux Klan had conducted a parade late one night, and they were speaking over bugles, saying, warning the blacks that on election day, don't go to the polls. If you do, it's going to be serious trouble.
So these were brave and courageous men.
Oh, yeah.
They knew what they were in for.
That's right.
They understood where the problem was.
Yes. So now Mr. Norman, of course, before he came to my father, he came to Orlando and called for then a federal judge. I can't remember the judge's name, and explained to him what happened. And the judge informed him, says, well, if you can survive this, you can bring a lawsuit because you are entitled to vote. So since they denied you the opportunity to vote, you can sue the county or the state. But so then Mr. Perry left the judge, came on to my father, and of course informed my father of what happened, and then he disappeared. So we don't know what became of him.
You were a very young child at that point.
I was 13 years of age.
How did that impact your life? What was the statement there? And I know you've been an outspoken advocate for the rights of African Americans in Central Florida for a long time.
Yes.
Is that one of the incidents that inspired you?
It had quite an impact, a devastating impact, because from age 6 in 1913, my first day in school, it was a wonder to me, why was it that we black children had to walk past the white school to go to our black school? And of course, there's a lot more in there that time won't permit us now to explain.
One quick question before I let you go, though. You stated to me that you felt that if the state of Florida paid reparations to the families of survivors of Rosewood, that they should do likewise for Ocoee. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, indeed so. It's my firm belief. Why not?
Pastor,
why not?
Thank you very much for joining the program.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate having you.
All right. And thank you, Son Clark. And may I just commend you for the great work, the great contribution you're making to our most prosperous community. And I believe that your continued efforts will do the more to make it better for all concerned.
Thank you very much.
All right. So check out that video. That's dealing with the Koi, Florida race riot 1920. That video's on YouTube, but it's in the article from Vice.com. The name of the article from Vice.com. That time, white people burned and pillaged a black community on Election Day. It's written by Deborah Douglas, February 27th, 2017. And we're going to post a link here for the for that article also, so you can check that out, watch the video as well. If 7% more African Americans vote than in 2016 is a win for, okay. Yeah. Well, actually, Trump won Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania in 2016 by only 78,000 votes collectively. Came down to those three battleground states. He won Michigan by 10,704 votes. Already you have twice as many people who voted in early voting in 2016 have voted now. Close to 97 million people have early voted. That's twice as many people who've early voted in 2016. When we look at quickly here, this article from CNN, they show a picture of the historical marker. Also, Fox News affiliate down in the Koi, Florida area, they covered the press conference that was held there today to commemorate this massacre. So we share that on our Facebook page also. Let's see. Let's go to this. I'm going to show you this. See if we can show you the historical marker here. So this historical marker is from this was put there in, this was erected in 2019. Okay, June 21st. It was unveiled June 21st, 2019 in Orlando, Florida. And this is a historical marker honoring July Perry. He was killed November 3rd, 1920. This is the lynching of July Perry. All right. Okay, so read this article from CNN.com. On this day, 100 years ago, a white mob unleashed the deadliest election day violence in U.S. history, by Harmeet Kaur, K-A-U-R. Check this out from CNN.com. All right. give this link also. We're going to, let's see here. So what we'll do is, okay, we run out of time. I'm going to show you this graphic here. This is, we talked about, proposal to pay descendants of Ocoee, Florida massacre victims takes a step forward. We talked about this last week, okay? And this was an article from Yahoo News. And I want to show you this one also. A pair of bills seeking compensation for descendants of the 1920 Election Day race riot in Ocoee, Florida, received favorable hearings from the State Senate Judiciary Committee. So this article is from October 23rd, 2020. Okay, and we talked about this on our show last week. One of our shows last week. I can't remember which one. Let's blow this up here. Okay. The bill sponsors. Okay, the bill's sponsor, State Senator Randolph Bracey, Democrat from Ocoee, Florida, compared his proposals to one of the most controversial bills in Florida history, a $2.1 million payment to survivors and descendants of racial violence in Rosewood, Florida. Quote, there hasn't been a bill like this since Rosewood, so I'm excited it's moving forward, Senator Bracey said of the legislation approved in 1994. So, okay, they give some background information here. All right, so check out this article also. Okay, so the pair of bills is with this bill, a pair of bills, seeking compensation is moved forward. We talked about this last week. I just wanted to bring this up also. So take a look at this one as well. So YahooNews.com. All right, I want to do this comparison. Look at this right quick here. I don't know if we'll have time to get to the clip from President Obama. May have to say that to tomorrow. He was in Detroit and at Belle Isle on Saturday. Joe Biden and President Obama. Let's look at this. This is comparing from the Congressional Black Caucus, their Jobs and Justice Act 2020, comparing that to the Donald Trump's Fool's Gold plan, his platinum plan. Okay, this is a graphic that shows you a side by side, and I'm trying to see where is it? Okay, why isn't this coming up here? Hold on, it should come up. Just a second, let me try to. All right, so we talked about this last week, and there was an article from newsone.com dealing with the CBC release. The Jobs and Justice Act 2020. There was an article from news.com from September 15, 2020. We talked about this here on our show back in September. And then we looked at this a few days ago as well. And we went through this again because this is a multifaceted bill that's divided into two parts. And this bill will specifically positively impact employment for African Americans in the criminal justice arena. The bill is divided into two parts. It is the multifaceted Jobs and Justice Act 2020. Okay. I'm going to try to bring this graphic up because it was not The screen share wasn't working here, so I'm trying to figure out why. So I can show this to you again, and I'll show you the article. Okay, here it is. Now it's coming up. All right. So this is the Jobs and Justice Act from Congressional Black Caucus. Hopefully you can see this. So when we look at this, and can you all see this? I don't think I can blow this up anymore. We'll try. Okay, we'll look at the. Okay, we'll look at. So they're comparing the Jobs and Justice Act to Trump's Platinum Plan. So when we look at, it's broken into different parts: jobs, small businesses, education, police reform. When we look at now, this bill has to pass the Senate and then be signed into law by a president. Has to pass the U.S. Senate and be signed into law by a president. So the Jobs and Justice Act invests $100 billion to create over 1.9 million jobs by addressing critical physical and digital resource needs in schools. Compare that to Trump's Platinum Plan, his Fool's Gold Plan, invests almost $20 billion toward broadband and internet access to create opportunities, improve classroom connectivity, and access to telehealth services. The Jobs and Justice Act creates a 3-year program at the Department of Labor to test the impact of federal job guarantees in up to 15 diverse communities and regions experiencing high unemployment. Trump's Platinum Plan, it says examine barriers to employment, including fees, occupational licensing, arrest record inaccuracy, expungement. The Jobs and Justice Act will encourage businesses contracted to rebuild infrastructure to recruit actively, hire, and provide on-the-job training to African-American men ages 18 to 39. Trump's Platinum Plan says it will reach greater levels of historic employment and wage growth for the Black community. The Jobs and Justice Act of 2020 from the Congressional Black Caucus, when we look at the impact on small businesses, it will allow entrepreneurs to contribute up to $10,000 per year into a tax-free account for business-related expenses. Contributions to the account could accumulate up to $150,000 and withdrawn tax-free. Trump's Platinum Plan for small businesses: grow minority-owned businesses with additional tax cuts to stimulate hiring and investment. The Jobs and Justice Act, when it comes to education, will invest $2.5 billion in new federal grants to encourage states and districts to ban unfair and discriminatory school discipline practices and improve school climates, particularly related to girls of color. So this deals with things like the school to prison pipeline. Okay, this deals with things like the school to prison pipeline. All right, so Trump's Platinum Plan says federal, state, and local community partnership to close failing schools to replace with full school choice and education opportunity. There's no dollar commitment, no money commitment, no grants. So what are you talking about? When we look at police reform, okay, the Jobs and Justice Act, let me need to zoom out a little bit here. The George Floyd Jobs and Justice Act that failed in the Senate, they incorporated that into this Jobs and Justice Act of 2020. try to get this passed. It goes further. What Democrats are pushing for police reform goes much farther than the bill that Senator Tim Scott sponsored in the Black Tea Party Republican sponsored in the U.S. Senate. The bill from the Democrats goes much farther. The Justice and Policing Act calls for real reform to ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants, limit the transfer of military-grade equipment to state and local law enforcement, require body cameras, reinvesting in critical community-based programs, and create a nationwide police misconduct registry, and much more. The Trump Fool's Gold plan will restore safety to Americans, to America's great cities by working with police departments, community leaders, and mental health professionals to install the most responsive, professional, and accountable models of policing, including diversity training and accreditation standards. But you ban diversity training that talks about white privilege and different things like this. Trump just signed an executive order to do that. The Jobs and Justice Act dealing with police reform goes much farther than what Republicans were pushing. Okay, but you need a Senate. You need people in the Senate that will pass this. It's not going to pass with Republicans in control of the Senate. This is why they have to go. Democrats have to take back control of the Senate so you can get these bills passed in the Senate. The bill to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour. That passed the House of Representatives in July 2019. It's stuck in the Senate. Senator Mitch McConnell controls the Senate. He's Senate Majority Leader. No bill can come to the Senate floor for debate or for debate or a vote without the majority leader's approval. Okay, he controls the Senate. If we look at this article here, not neither Democrat nor Republican, but I'm also not stupid. I can see who keeps passing bills that are beneficial for African Americans, and I can see who keeps blocking the bills that are beneficial to African Americans. If we look at this article, we've talked about this one before. We're going to get out of here in a few minutes. Let's see here. This is from Vox.com. And this helps to put a lot of things in perspective. Because unfortunately, a lot of people listen to just a lot of BS and don't know any of this information. This is from November 29th, 2019. November 29th, 2019. House Democrats have passed nearly 400 bills. Trump and Republicans are ignoring them. Legislative paralysis gripped Capitol Hill well before impeachment started. Congress has passed just 70 bills into law this year. That means passed the House and the Senate, signed the law by President. This is back in November. Was this November 2019? Yeah, November 29th, 2019. If we look at some of the bills, Trump is accusing Democrats of doing nothing as he refuses to work with them. Here's a list of major bills the House has passed since January 2019. Most of these die in the Senate. Healthcare. House, let's blow this up. I want to make sure everybody sees this. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay. So this is why you have to have a Senate that will pass these bills, and you have to have a president that signs them into law. House Resolution 259, Medicaid Extenders, Act of 2019. House Resolution 271, condemning the Trump administration's legal campaign to take away America's health care. HR 986, Protecting Americans with Pre-Existing Conditions, Act of 2019. HR 987, Strengthening Health Care and Lowering Prescription Drug Costs, Act. Then we go down and we look at civil rights. Okay, HR 1, For the People Act, HR 5, Equality Act, HR 7, Paycheck Fairness Act. We look at Gun Control, Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. HR 1112, Enhanced Background Checks Act of 2019. Look at environment. We deal with climate change, Local Water Protection Act, Natural Flood Insurance Program Extension Act. We look at, let's see, okay, other major legislation, Violence Against Women Act reauthorized, raise the wage act, raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour from $7.25 an hour. Let's see here. Okay. These are all bills as of November 2019 have passed the House of Representatives, but blocked in the Senate. Most of these haven't been signed, and most of these have not passed the Senate. They're being blocked in the Senate while they kept confirming these unqualified federal judges that Trump kept nominating. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so check out this article here. Watch our Sunday night show because we went through and compared Biden's 22-page agenda to empower African Americans. We compared that to Donald Trump's 1.5-page agenda, the Platinum Plan for Black America. We compared the two. Okay. Biden's was much better if you haven't figured it out. Here is the link to Biden's plan. You can check it out. We'll give you the link to Donald Trump's also, if you have a good laugh. Where's his platinum plan? Okay. I call it the fool's gold plan because it's fool's gold. It's not platinum. All right. And that's what we'll do. Okay. So Saturday, October 31st, there was a campaign rally in Detroit. President Barack Obama, Joe Biden, they were out at Belle Isle. And President Obama roasted Donald Trump. We're going to try to, let's see, try to pull this clip up here. We'll give you an excerpt of it here, and then we'll play some more on our show Tuesday night, I guess. Let's see here. And he's talking, Obama's talking about Trump's response to coronavirus.
I took it seriously. He hasn't shown any interest in just doing the work or helping anybody but himself or his friends. We're treating the presidency as anything more than a reality show to give him the attention that he craves so desperately. And the rest of us have had to live with consequences. Almost 230,000 Americans have died. More than 100,000 small businesses have closed. Almost 300,000 jobs are gone in Michigan alone. America just had its single worst week of new cases. We've been living with this thing for months now. And we just had the worst week in terms of incidents. And in the face of that, what is Donald Trump's closing argument? Oh, he says that people are too focused on COVID. COVID, he's complaining. He's jealous of COVID's media coverage. But that's not enough. Now he's starting to accuse doctors of profiting off of this pandemic. He actually said this. He said, they're making a big deal out of it so they can make more money. Who says that? Here, you've got doctors who are risking their lives to save other people, who have to, every time they go in and then they come home, they have to completely isolate themselves, remove all their protective garments, shower, scrub, do everything just to make sure their own families don't get sick. In some cases, don't get to see their families. And he's saying they're doing that to make a buck. He can't fathom that somebody would be willing to make sacrifices for others unless there was some economic motivation. That's how he thinks. And now we got his chief of staff saying, he said this on TV, said, we're not going to control the pandemic. Just flat out just said, we're not going to control it. We noticed. Yes, you're right. And that's why we've got to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, because you're not going to control the pandemic. They just got kind of like, I guess I'm dating myself. You guys remember Mad Magazine, the old people do? Remember that you guys had Alfred E. Newman? Remember he had that big grin, funny looking beard, ears like mine? And he used to say, what me worry? Well, you didn't worry about anything. That's how these guys are. Why should I be worried? The same way you remember when Republicans were saying, let Detroit go bankrupt. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And now they might as well just be saying, let America get COVID. It's not our problem. You're exaggerating it. That's what they are literally saying every day. Listen, if Trump were focused on COVID from the beginning, cases wouldn't be reaching new record highs across the country. And some of the places he's holding rallies have seen new spikes after he leaves town. He's going around having events, big events, no masks, no protective gear, no precautions. What's his obsession with crowds anyway? I mean, he's still worried. He is still talking about his inauguration crowd being small. Although he doesn't admit it. Does he have nothing better to worry about? That was 4 years ago. I mean, what kind of trauma did he go through? Did no one come to his birthday parties when he was a kid? Is Fox News not giving him enough attention? And that's the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump right there. Trump cares about feeding his ego. Joe cares about keeping you safe and your family safe and getting this country moving again. And that's why you've got to make sure that every single one of you vote.
All right, so we're going to pause it right there. We posted the link. That's from WXYZ Channel 7 in Detroit. Biden holds drive-in campaign event in Detroit. That's from Saturday, October 31st, 2020. We posted the link. You can check out the full clip. Very quickly here, about to get out of here. So the last poll came out, NBC News, Wall Street Journal poll came out. Biden leads Trump by 10 points, nationally 52% to 42%. And when we look at coronavirus, we see the article from NBCnews.com, COVID-19 cases, deaths rising rapidly ahead of Election Day. COVID-19 cases, deaths rising rapidly ahead of Election Day. We see nearly 9.3 million cases have been reported since the start of the pandemic, and more than 232,000 people have died. In the last 2 weeks, records for the daily number of new cases have been set and shattered on successive days. Most recently, this past Friday, when 98,500 infections were reported. That was October 30th, Friday, October 30th. And during the same period, during the last 2 weeks, case numbers rose by 25% in 40 states, with some of the biggest increases coming in battleground states such as Michigan. Cases in Michigan increased by 115%. And Wisconsin, cases in Wisconsin increased by 88%. And NBC News analysis showed. If we look at the updates from the Washington Post dealing with coronavirus, we see that the 7-day average of new daily coronavirus infections in the U.S. hit 81,740 on Sunday, which is a new high, the 7-day average, okay, which is more accurate than looking at just just looking at cases for 1 day. Record-shattering numbers of hospitalizations were also recorded in 9 states. More than 9.2 million, that's about 9.3 million coronavirus cases, and 230,000 fatalities have been reported nationwide since February. And okay, so we'll give you we'll look at this some more on Tuesday. Check out the updates from the Washington Post, the live updates from the Washington Post dealing with coronavirus. Okay. So we're here Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on 6 days a week now, and we're still on Sundays. And we're on Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. We're still on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All my DVD lectures are there, and you can order my DVD lectures. We have digital downloads, and you can watch you can read all the articles I've written as well. We also have a recommended reading list of books at our website, also AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. Look, we're going to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.